Welcome to The Explainer. If you think history is just a bunch of dusty dates and serious men in wigs making totally logical decisions, oh boy, you are in for a hyper-fast ride today. We're going to sprint through some of history's most ridiculous, mind-blowing, and completely true facts. Because I promise you, the real story of human civilization is way more chaotic and, frankly, a whole lot more hilarious than any textbook ever let on.
Okay, let's just dive right into this with a totally bizarre question for you. What do a potato-eating pig, a soup kettle, and a flock of emus all have in common? I know, it sounds like the setup to a terrible joke, right? But the answer is actually a perfect testament to the sheer absurdity of human history. Because believe it or not, every single one of these things was at the center of an actual, recorded military conflict.
That brings us to Section 1, Wars Fought Over Absolutely Nothing. Let's look at the most petty and unbelievable military standoffs ever recorded. Picture this. It's the mid-1800s. You've got two massive global superpowers, the United States and the British Empire, and they are locked in a fierce, high-stakes boundary dispute over the San Juan Islands. Tensions are absolutely boiling over. Militaries are on high alert. The drums of war are literally beating. It looked like the exact spark that would ignite a massive, bloody international conflict between two heavily armed nations. And then, the conflict actually erupts. But the total number of casualties? Exactly 1. And no, it wasn't a soldier, it wasn't a general, it was a pig. An actual literal pig. You see, a British-owned pig just wandered onto an American farmer's land and got caught eating his potatoes. So the Americans shot the pig. And that is literally it. That's the legendary pig war. Two global superpowers nearly unleashed absolute devastation upon each other over a single tuber-munching farm animal. I mean, history is completely absurd.
And crazy enough, the pig war wasn't just a one-off. Take the kettle war, for instance. We have the mighty Holy Roman Empire facing off against the Republic of the Seven United Netherlands. It's a tense naval standoff. A single shot is fired. And what does that cannonball hit? A soup kettle. It instantly destroys the kettle. And honestly, that was the end of the whole shebang. The only casualty of the entire conflict was just whoever missed out on lunch that day.
But if we're talking about embarrassing military endeavors, we absolutely have to talk about the Emu War of 1932. Farmers in Western Australia were dealing with these massive flocks of crop-destroying emus. So, the government sent in the actual military, armed to the teeth with machine guns and thousands of rounds of ammunition. The result? The emus scattered, regrouped, and just completely outmaneuvered the soldiers. After a month of utter humiliation, the humans literally gave up. The flightless birds officially won a war.
Now, when humans do actually fight other humans, they can be surprisingly efficient. Just look at the 1896 Anglo-Zanzibar War. The British issued a strict ultimatum for the Sultan of Zanzibar to step down by 9 a.m. He refused. Well, at exactly 9:02 a.m., the British Navy opened fire on his wooden palace. By 9:40 a.m., the Sultan had fled and the war was entirely over. 38 minutes! The absolute shortest war in human history lasted less time than a single episode of your favorite sitcom.
Which naturally leads us right into Section 2, Animals that Changed History. Because why shouldn't animals get in on the human action?
Just check out this resume. During World War II, the Polish army adopted an orphaned bear cub. But they didn't just keep him as a cute little mascot. They officially enlisted him as a private named Wojtek, just so he could travel on a British transport ship. Wojtek drank beer, smoked cigarettes, and get this, during the brutal Battle of Monte Cassino, this actual bear helped the soldiers carry heavy artillery shells. He was a legitimate, fully enlisted World War II soldier.
And speaking of bears and places they absolutely shouldn't be, take a look at this epic loophole. The famous poet Lord Byron was studying at Cambridge University, and he was furious because they had a strict rule banning dogs from the dorms. So, to protest, Byron went out and bought a tame bear. He walked it on a leash right into his dorm and argued to the college administration that there was technically no specific rule banning bears. And the craziest part? The college actually had to let him keep it.
But the most incredible thing here is the number 0. That is the total number of mistakes made by Jack the baboon. Back in the 1880s, a South African railway worker sadly lost both his legs, so he trained a baboon to operate the railway signal levers for him. The officials were so shocked when they found out that they investigated, were incredibly impressed, and then officially hired the baboon.
Jack operated those railway signals for 9 whole years, was paid in wages and beer, and never made a single error. Not one.
Moving on from highly competent animals, let's take a look at some highly incompetent humans in Section 3, Royals and Leaders Behaving Very Badly. Historical leaders were often wildly eccentric, to put it mildly.
Take the Roman Emperor Caligula, for instance. According to historical accounts, he marched his entire formidable Roman army down to the beach and commanded them to literally attack the ocean with their swords to defeat the sea god. Just picture that for a second. Heavily armored troops furiously stabbing the water, and when he decided he had finally won, he had them collect seashells as war booty. You really can't make this stuff up.
And leaders often attract the most absurd situations themselves. Look at the plots against Cuban leader Fidel Castro. According to intelligence, he survived over 634 assassination attempts. And we aren't just talking about your standard snipers here. The plots were cartoonishly bizarre. We're talking exploding seashells, poisoned cigars, a diving suit laced with toxic fungi, and even a plot to dust his shoes with thallium salts just to make his famous beard fall out and completely ruin his image.
Castro was actually incredibly self-aware about the absolute cartoon logic of his own life. He once joked, "If surviving assassination attempts were an Olympic sport, I'd win gold." I mean, when your enemies try to kill you with exploding seashells, you really have no choice but to just laugh about it.
But sometimes, leaders didn't even need assassins to do them in. Take King Adolf Frederick of Sweden. He is famously known as the king who literally ate himself to death. After a massive feast of lobster, caviar, sauerkraut, and champagne, he decided it was time for dessert. So, he proceeded to eat 14 servings of his favorite sweet roll, the semla, served in hot milk. He suffered severe digestive problems and died shortly after. Extreme gluttony officially recorded in the royal annals.
Okay, so we've covered bad leadership. Now let's jump into Section 4, Ridiculous Historical Accidents. These are massive, global shifts that happened purely by bizarre coincidence.
Check out this exchange rate between naval artillery and carbonated sugar water. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union really wanted Pepsi, but they couldn't pay with global currency. So, what did they do? They bartered. They traded 17 submarines, a cruiser, a frigate, and a destroyer in exchange for Pepsi soda. So for a brief, shining moment in history, the Pepsi Corporation possessed one of the largest navies on the face of the earth.
And here's another massive cultural shift born entirely from an accident. In the early 1900s, Thomas Edison owned the patents to nearly all movie-making equipment in New Jersey, and he ruthlessly sued anyone who tried to use them. To escape his aggressive lawyers, filmmakers literally packed up their things and fled as far west as they possibly could to Los Angeles, where the courts were way less friendly to Edison. That's right, the entire glamorous empire of Hollywood was accidentally created purely out of copyright evasion.
Let's bring it all the way back to the beginning for our final section today. Section 5, Absurd Ancient World Oddities. Because it turns out, our ancestors were just as unhinged as we are.
This might just be the ultimate philosophical troll job in all of history. The great philosopher Plato once confidently defined a human being as a featherless biped. While hearing this, his rival, the incredibly eccentric philosopher Diogenes, grabbed a chicken, plucked all of its feathers off, burst right into Plato's prestigious academy, held up the naked bird, and shouted, "Behold Plato's man!" It literally forced Plato to awkwardly add with broad, flat nails to his official definition.
And while Greek philosophers were busy trolling each other, the Romans were out there completely redefining networking. Ancient Roman public toilets were literal social hubs. They were just open rows of bench holes right next to each other, where citizens would sit, do their business, gossip, and even negotiate trade deals. And worse, there was no toilet paper. They used a shared communal sponge attached to a stick. Just let that mental image sink in for a moment. Yikes.
But behind all these weird, chaotic, and hilarious facts lies something deeply awe-inspiring. Think about this. Humans have existed for around 200,000 years, but our written history, everything we know, every war, every empire, every potato-eating pig, only covers the last 6,000 years. That means a staggering 97% of the entire human story is completely lost to time.
Which leaves us with this final, crazy thought for you to chew on. If we know about the Emu Wars, the 38-minute bombardments, the Pepsi navies, and the bears enrolled in college, and that only represents 3% of our total existence, how many more unbelievably absurd stories are out there, buried in the dark, just waiting to be found? Keep questioning what you think you know, and I'll see you in the next explainer.